I'm Jono Buchanan, and in this video we're going to be looking at Logic's drummer instrument to find out how we can add really intuitive drum performances to a track. So in this project I've got a basic 8-bar piano figure, and it sounds like this. Now there are a number of ways that we could develop an idea like this, but what I want to do is to bring in some drums, but it would be really nice to have the feel of a real drummer applied to this track as it grows. And the way that Logic allows me to do that is to use the dedicated drummer instrument. Here's how it works. If I click on the plus button, I have a chance to select a dedicated drummer track. So not a software instrument track or an audio track, but a drummer track. And here I can choose even from a series of genres musically. So do I want a rock drummer or alternative or songwriter, or from a range of electronic options as well? I'm going to stick with alternative for now, and I can change that later if I want to. I'm going to select create, and what Logic does automatically is to create a region for me. But as you can see, it's not really a region that looks like a regular MIDI region. What we're looking at here is a kind of an approximation of a drum part, with information down at the bottom representing the bass drum and the snare drum pattern, and information towards the top representing hi-hats and cymbals. Now the way that these notes are actually controlled and the way that I can change the pattern that I'm listening to is controlled down here at the bottom. As you can see, we have this matrix which from left to right runs from a simple pattern to a more complicated one, and from bottom to top runs from quiet, soft playing styles through to louder ones. So to accompany this piano part that I've put together, let's start with a simple pattern that's played moderately loudly. And as I move this ball across to the left-hand side, you can see that this pattern has changed. Let's listen to it. So you can begin to hear the pattern that's being played. Let's go for something more complicated and even louder. We'll end up with more hits and more variation in the performance too. So we've got a much more involved drum pattern there. I can increase the number of fills that I'm going to hear, and again the waveform will display to show the extra fills. Now there's one at the end of bar 2, as well as a more involved one at the end of bar 4 and at the end of bar 8 as well. Or I can back those right down so that we end up with our core pattern but with less variation. I can bring in a swing value so that the whole pattern is a bit more swung as well if I want to. Let's hear something with lots of fills and a slightly more swung feel. I can go even further, as well as relying on this matrix to provide me with an overall pattern. I've got some control over the patterns that the kick and snare can play, so I can vary these as well. As you can see, the waveform is updating every time I do that to become more involved and more complicated. And similarly, I can do the same thing with the hi-hat part. So again, if I want a different feel, I can change these for the different sections of the kit. And as you can see, I can update them as I'm listening back until I find a pattern that I like. So I'm going to go for something a bit less involved from a hi-hat's point of view, and I'm also going to go back to roughly where we were for the kick and the snare. I might even choose to add some percussion. I'm going to put in a little tambourine part here as well by selecting the tambourine icon, and that's going to be added now to the performance as well. And also I'm going to just turn the swing down a little bit back to a straighter pattern. And that feels about right to me. So what we've now got is a sort of drum part that's sort of interactively something that we can control to work alongside the piano. But what if what I want to do now is to have the sort of control that I would expect to have if I was programming drums from scratch? I want to be able to change these individual notes individually so that I can take out ones that I don't like or add more in spaces where I feel another fill would work well. Well, I can actually convert this individual region to become a MIDI region in its own right. So if I come to convert, I can convert this to a MIDI region. And the way that I've done that is by pressing Control whilst clicking on that region. And then from the pop-up menu that's arrived, I'm selecting Convert and then this option here. And the moment I do that, this part becomes a regular MIDI region. Every single one of these hits now is available to me, so I can select it, I can turn up velocity, I can erase it, I can add new parts if I want to as well. So if we now listen through this pattern again, we'll be able to see those drum hits go down. The individual colours here represent different velocities. So the brighter the colour, the louder the note is. So you can see that the tambourine is broadly very loud, whereas some of the snare hits, these purple and blues, are quieter. Let's have a listen. Okay, so if I suddenly decided, for example, at the end that in this very last bar, this fill is too involved, I could take some of these snares and simply select them and backspace to delete them. So I'm just going to take out most of that fill right there at the end, and then right at the very end of the piece, we'll hear a much less busy pattern. I can use the ruler here to scroll back to about bar 7, so we don't listen to the whole sequence, we can just hear the last 2 bars. And if I decide that I've got rid of too much information there, I can use Command and Z to undo those steps to get back to where I started. So in that video, we've created a drummer track. We've used the unique interface for that instrument to create an overall feel that we like. And then what we've done is to convert that drum part to a MIDI region. And what that's done is to allow us to have per note control over the drums that we've created.